Who's your commander?
Good luck.
Equip.
Move to combat.
Resolves.
Now, before you attack
Does
me,
anyone have an answer?
well played.
Good game.
Hello everyone, DJ here with the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and I have some very mean cards for you very nice people. I want to talk about the top 8 meanest cards in Commander. Let's find out how horrible we can all be to all of our friends and people in our play group. Alright, first up we have Divine Intervention. 6 white for an enchantment. It enters the battlefield with 2 intervention counters on it. Very customizable counters there. And at the beginning of your upkeep, remove an intervention counter from Divine Intervention. If there are no intervention counters on it, the game is a draw. Oh my gosh, there's so many wonderful I win the game cards that can cause frustration among your opponents. But what about the cards that end the game in a draw? All the work that everyone has put forward, and you're just like, let's just tie, everyone. Oh my gosh, this card is such a troll, and in my book is pretty mean. But you're not going to see it very often because of that price tag. Divine Intervention is on the reserved list and is just under $60. Oh, but that's okay. I have a bunch more cards on this list that are very affordable and just as mean. Next up, we have Possessed Portal. 8 mana for an artifact. If a player would draw a card, that player skips that draw instead. Immediately mean. Drawing cards is the best thing in Magic, and suddenly I have to skip out on every draw, but it gets better. At the end of each turn, each player sacrifices a permanent unless he or she discards a card from his or her hand. So basically this slowly eats away at everyone's resources. You have to discard a card from your hand or sacrifice a permanent. See, the key is eventually Possessed Portal will have to be sacrificed because there's no more resources in the game, and then the game can start back up again. But you know you're not playing this in a fair deck. You're going to keep Possessed Portal on the battlefield for forever, and everyone else is going to be annoyed and constantly crippled and never be able to draw cards. Oh my gosh, this is such a mean card, and very playable at just $5.50, but please don't play it. This card is way too mean. So I think that we've all decided that land destruction is a little bit mean. The social contract of Commander has it so that we're not constantly seeing Armageddons in our playgroups. But there is a little bit of land destruction that is just somehow a little bit more mean than just blowing up the world. One of my favorites is Sunder. 3 blue for an instant. This can happen at instant speed. Return all lands to owner's hands. Now, why is this mean than Armageddon? It ends up being the same thing. You know, all the lands are off the battlefield, but the thing that I love most is making everyone pick up their lands and then move to discard. Or even better, how about we just windfall them all away? Now, this is symmetrical. Your lands can't be protected from this effect, but man, it is so much fun. I mean, not fun, this is super duper mean, but not as mean as my favorite land destruction spell, Wake of Destruction. 3 red for a sorcery that says destroy target land and all lands with the same name as that land. So we have cards like Blood Moon or Ruination or things that punish greedy mana bases. But I love that this is even meaner, that you go after the budget player, the monocolored player, because what do? Well, you choose their basic land, and then you wipe out all of their basics. So if you have someone at your table that is just, I don't know, playing mono white, has a lot of planes, maybe a budget build, you can just wipe every land they have away from them. Oh, I love it so much. I mean, I hate it. It's super mean. Don't do that. Don't do it. You know, I was contemplating on including a mean card, a classic one, like Mind Twist or Hymn to Torok or Hypnotic Spectre, but I found a little bit meaner hand attack when it comes to Identity Crisis. 2 white for a sorcery, remove all cards in target player's hand and graveyard from the game. They're just gone. All of them. Oh my gosh. Sometimes though in Commander, the best thing is that you attack their hand and they're like, that's okay. You know, I've got recursion. I've got ways to gain value from my graveyard. And you're like, nope, wipe that away too. This is also targets too. It's just target player. You're like, you're the one that's going down and going back to 0. But I think I prefer Cabal Conditioning. 6 and a black, 7 CMC for a sorcery. Any number of target players each discard cards from their hand equal to the highest converted mana cost among permanents you control. So you can select all 3 of your opponents, and if you have, I don't know, a piece of ramp, let's say like a Hedron Archive to get this out a little bit faster, then they're discarding 4 cards. But odds are they're just dumping their hands and you're sitting there with your full grip, just being all mean and slowing down the game for everyone except yourself. Now, before we move on to the top 4 mean cards for Commander, I want to make sure that you know that my Kickstarter for this awesome, beautiful playmat is ending in just a few short days. This is a limited time offer, and so if you want to get this playmat, you should get it now because you won't be able to get it any other time. All right, let's get back to the top 8 list with number 4. We have a goofy one, Tidal Control. Okay, this 65-cent enchantment is 1 blue, and unfortunately has a cumulative upkeep of 2. So we're not going to be able to keep this around on the battlefield for too long. But this text, any player may pay 2 or 2 life to counter target red or green spell. Play this ability as interrupt, you can't prevent this damage, blah, 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 blah. Oh my gosh. Basically, this is a 3 mana enchantment that you do have to pay some mana to keep around, but it prevents anyone playing red or green spells. Just, you can't do it because 2 life is meaningless. 2 mana is tiny and anyone can do it. So this just allows the whole table to team up against the green and red player. If you want a way to go after people that are ramping too much, you're like, oh man, this ramp deck is out of control. They have way too many lands. They take over the game. How about you counter everything? Just shut them out of spells for a while. Oh, gross. Okay, and then also in this category, we have something that's a little bit more universal if you don't have a red or green player. Zur's Weirding. 3 and a blue for an enchantment that basically says the game shuts down and goes to a grinding halt. Okay, players play with their hands revealed, so no more secrets. Everyone plays with their hands revealed. I like this telepathy effect. If a player would draw a card, he or she reveals it instead, then any player may pay 2 life. If a player does, put that card into its owner's graveyard. Otherwise, they get to draw the card. So basically, if someone's about to draw a land, you're like, yeah, sure, you can have that land. When someone draws their Crater Hoof, you're like, no, I'll pay 2 life, and that gets binned. And this just happens to everyone, and anyone can pay. So as soon as anything problematic happens, you just say, 2 life, whatever. And then it goes back and forth. Everyone's paying 2 life here and there, and we have so much life to work with. Yeah, no one draws cards. Just no one. Everyone just slowly pays 2 life over and over again. And guess what? If anyone wants to try to remove Zur's Weirding, if they say like, oh, well, I'll just tutor up an enchantment removal spell. No, you'll never draw it. We'll never let you draw it. This has built-in protection and is ultimately so mean. At number 3, I've included a card called Notion Thief. Notion Thief is 2 blue-black for a 3/1 human rogue. I had to look because I'm not terribly familiar with the power and toughness of this card because ultimately it doesn't matter. It's the next text. Flash. If an opponent would draw a card except the first one he or she draws in each of his or her draw steps, instead that player skips that draw and you draw a card. Oh, Notion Thief. I love that you enter the battlefield and then suddenly every card is mine. My favorite is Brainstorm, where I get to draw the cards and you have to take 2 cards from your hand and put them back on top of your library. It's magical. Okay, this card is really similar to Leovold, Emissary of Trust, which was banned because this effect is super powerful and miserable and you're a mean person for doing it. But oh my gosh, is it so much fun. I also love that this has flash, so it can just kind of come in out of nowhere and interrupt your opponent. It almost has me thinking of Aven Mind Sensor, which is also a slightly mean card, but they deserved it because they were searching their library with Aven Mind Sensor. Okay, the one place where Notion Thief is dangerous and the interaction that I love most is with a Consecrated Sphinx. Because if you draw with your Notion Thief, I'll say, oh, you drew a card, I'll draw 2 with my Sphinx. And then you have to draw 2, you have to draw more. And then I'll say, oh, I'll draw with my Sphinx, but then you have to draw instead. And then I'll say, oh, I'll draw with my Sphinx, but you have to draw instead. And I will kill you with card draw. But that's the best way to die. Am I right? I'm right. All right, we're down to the top 2 meanest cards in EDH. I've got to say, this one's pretty mean and quite psychedelic. It's Time Sifter. 5 mana for an artifact, and it reads, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, each player removes the top card of his or her library from the game. The player who has removed the card with the highest converted mana cost takes an extra turn after this one. Then if there's a tie, keep going until there isn't a tie. Okay, so what does this mean? How does this work in EDH? Well, at the beginning of each player's upkeep, we literally decide who's gonna go next, and it's all by highest converted mana cost. And you can build your deck with very high converted mana cost to be able to take advantage of Time Sifter, which means that you will get way more turns than your opponents, and it also means that some of your opponents that have, I don't know, a reasonable curve, maybe a lot of lands in their deck, or they're just slightly unlucky, just never get to take a turn. I mean, you know the power of like Time Warp, or even 2 turns, like Time Stretch, or Expropriate. I mean, this can go crazy because it's also random too. So it's very mean. People get frustrated when this card happens, but also you're going to be taking more turns than them. And that's just so amazing, where they just have to sit there and hope that the top of their library can get them a single turn of the game. By the way, you're going to have ways to stack the top of your library. You'll like, I'm going to Vampiric Tutor in response to the trigger, and then you just immediately get an extra turn. Oh my gosh. You just can't win with this card. It is very, very mean. But not as mean as our top card. We have a card that's mean in so many different ways. It's Invoke Prejudice. Blue, 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 blue. For an enchantment with truly horrifying art. You have to wonder, magic what? I mean, this is not okay, but we keep reading and it ends up being an insanely mean enchantment anyways. If an opponent casts a summon spell that does not match the color of one of the creatures under your control, the spell is countered, unless the caster pays an additional X, where X is the casting cost of the summon spell. Okay, I know that's old text right there, but basically as long as you have a creature and someone tries to play a creature that's a different color, they have to pay double the mana, or else, no, you can't have creatures. So this is an enchantment that basically makes it impossible for anyone to play a creature anywhere near on curve. Just imagine doubling the cost of every single creature you have. That Craterhoof is suddenly 16 mana? Are you ever casting that? I mean, it just makes everything super duper miserable. But luckily you don't see it very often because, again, blue, 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 horrible art, and $365. Okay, so do you want to be a horrible person on a budget without offensive art in your commander deck? Then let me introduce you to Ice Cave, a 30-cent alternative to this other horrible card. 3 blue, blue for an enchantment. Whenever a player plays a spell, any other player may pay that spell's mana cost. If a player does, counter the spell. So this again opens you up to some counters as well. But honestly, you can just play Ice Cave and be like, all right, everyone, go. Counter each other's spells. So you could just counter spells. You can counter anything. You do need the right mana. But your deck might be built for that, and your opponent's decks well, they might have a lot of their spells countered right out from under them. Alright everyone, I hope you enjoyed learning about all these mean cards, and hopefully you haven't seen very many of them because you play with nice people. I want to thank Cool Stuff Inc. because they support the Jumbo Commander YouTube channel, and you can get some discounts from cards through Cool Stuff Inc. if you use the coupon code JUMBO5, and that's for 5% off cards at Cool Stuff Inc. Thank you guys so much. And I also want to thank everyone that has supported my Kickstarter already, and if you want to support me, go ahead and click on the link in the description, and it'll take you over there, and you can get an awesome playmat before they're gone. And you'll never see them again unless they're on the battle table across from you, and then you're all jealous because they have a beautiful playmat and you probably have a great playmat too, but you know, theirs is prettier. It's gonna be. Okay, I want to thank my patrons so much. Thank you, patrons, but mostly thank you so much for watching. Actually, let me know in the comments down below if I missed any mean cards, because I want to know your meanest cards that you have, because I want them for science. I'm not going to play them at all in my decks. All right, everyone. I'll see you really soon. Bye-bye.